Hi, it's Clarissa. Welcome back to my series on boundaries. Now we're going to talk about why boundaries are essential for healthy personal and spiritual growth. So people might say, why do we need boundaries if we're all one? If we're all actually one of the permanent flow of consciousness, there are no boundaries. We don't begin and end at any particular point. Well, this might be true at the spiritual level. So at the level of pure consciousness or at the level of pure spiritual essence, that may be true. There may be no real separation between everything that is one in the universe. However, at this gross physical level, I believe we are not only responsible for our own individual slither of consciousness and what we do with it, but that we also need to manage what happens to our soul energy. So let me define what I mean between soul and spirit and obviously physical body. So we are part of the spiritual essence of the universe. The consciousness that pervades everything is the consciousness that pervades our cells and our body and our soul and our spirit. That is present at all levels. However, there is a step down, obviously, through the dimensions to emerge as a physical body. Now, when we are born as a physical body, we develop an ego. Right? We need an ego, what I call everyone's general operating system, EGOS, egos, to get around in the world. We also are born with a step down level of spiritual matter. So while our spirit, which I also refer to as the higher self, has that connection to all that is, as that vibration steps down to the level of soul energy and then to the level of physical energy, there is a difference in that vibratory energy that is affected by physical and material things. So while our spiritual self may be ever present and unchanging in that sense of the word, our soul energy, which is more of our personal part of that energy, of that step down vibration, is affected by what happens on the physical plane, what we think, and definitely by our emotions. It's kind of like the soul is that toroidal field of emerging, unfolding energy within us, and it's sort of our personal part of spirit. So if you were to look at the oceans, and that the oceans are all somehow interconnected, this is not an ideal analogy, but for the sake of trying to explain, water is water. And water in its purest sense is hydrogen, two oxygens. However, we have our individual pool of water, say a pond of water, and that would be our soul. And what we do during our lifetime affects that pond of water. So if I pollute my emotional mind and body with a lot of toxic experiences, my pool, my soul, will be affected by that. The soul is malleable and imprintable. So that in that way the soul carries karma and energies and attachments. So as our soul, if we want to talk about reincarnation, which is a difficult subject because if you look at life as existing on one entire continuum, you realize that we sort of pop in and out of physical existences. But it's our soul that is reincarnating, and that is why we can have sort of impressions or habits, or some people can remember past lives or carry habits or personality traits through from their past, their previous incarnations. We are affected at our cellular level by the quality of the soul and vice versa. If emotions really affect our soul energy, we can have, heavy hearts, heavy souls. And so it's up to us with our conscious mind to make our soul as clean and clear as possible, to sort of undo old karma by not creating new karmas, by not creating more burden for the soul as we move forward. And we do that with our consciousness and with our awareness on our path of spiritual growth. We do that by undoing emotional ties, not letting go of people, but we do it by unburdening ourselves of historical things from the past, not ignoring them, not denying them, but doing our emotional work. That's what I mean by us being responsible for our individual slither of consciousness. We can be distracted by anything in this world. We can feed our attention and our awareness to anything. But what we really need to do is take ownership and responsibility for what we're doing with our consciousness and our awareness as much as possible, so that we can focus it on raising our vibration by enlightening our soul, by enlightening our personality, so we can become more, our souls can become more pure source energy, and that means that our spirit can connect with us greater. So our higher self can channel through and express. I believe that's what our point is that we become aware of our spiritual nature, and that we become the best conduits for our spirit to express in the world. And we do that by clearing away all of the other stuff, all of the unnecessary stuff, all of the distracting stuff, all of the dramas and the emotional attachments and all of that stuff. Which sounds sort of easy to say, but it can be done. It's ongoing work, and every time we do some, we lighten that load and that burden a little bit more, and our soul has a easier vehicle to be expressed through and not receive denser imprintations. So this is why boundaries are so important, because what happens to us affects us at the level of our soul as well. And that, as mentioned, inhibits the ability of our spiritual self to manifest and to express and to be here, and in this earthly plane, creating and manifesting and being and flowing. There's not really necessarily a clear agenda. It's the ability to clearly and freely express ourselves as soul, as source energy. But we do that by making the container, as it were, making the vehicle for that the most effective container. Because I do believe that the soul needs structure in order for it to expand, in order for it to become enlightened. Because if you think about that, spirit wants to express through soul, which is more of our physical connection, more of our earthly connection with spiritual source, then it needs a structured vehicle to be able to move through this life in. So boundaries facilitate that. Because when you decide and make clear who you are, what you really want, who you are authentically, we can have boundaries that are made by the personality and ego, which are a little bit more around power struggles. They are more about mine and yours. But as you develop and you sort of clear out stuff, you still have to operate in this world. So you still need the personality and you still need the ego's boundaries. But you can look at them from the perspective of, if you're a soul, if you're a spirit, how would that be? And you'll see that you still need to draw lines between what you will allow other people to do to you. In fact, it becomes even more important at that point in time, at that level, that you have more authority over your individual slither of consciousness and what you do with it, and who you will let exploit it or impinge on it, and how you will use your time and your life's energy. And because people will, people are people, and as beautiful and as wonderful as people are, they are their own personalities and egos. They have their own unmet needs, they have their own agendas, and their egos, their agendas, the distortions of their souls even, will try and get their needs met from the environment. Particularly younger souls will do this. Younger souls are here to learn. They're like toddlers. They are here to be me. They're here to take what they need and to develop that aspect of having and taking and getting, and that's the younger soul's way of learning. But as the soul develops over many lifetimes, the soul wants to become more mature in a way. It wants to become more refined. So it can develop to that point where there's an acknowledgement of the spiritual source that wants to emerge, and the attention is directed towards that as an objective, as opposed to simply getting the human and the instinctual needs met. Now, we all still have personalities and egos, so we all still have basic needs. We all still need to survive and defend ourselves and get our needs met in this world. So it's not like that will go away, but there's a greater awareness around how that is managed. And that also can lead to a greater boundary setting. It can lead to a person who is very clear in the fact that they don't want certain things happen. They don't really want to have interactions with certain kinds of people. They feel, energy at a level, and it becomes not okay for them to engage in certain sorts of behaviors, interactions, and with certain kinds of people. And that is not a judgment. That is just the way that it is. And you'll understand this if you get to that point, that even spiritual people can be quite firm and assertive in what they'll put up with. They can even appear quite harsh because they don't want to put up with people's BS anymore. So that's just part of where people go on a path. They may go to an extreme of that at some point. They may discover that they need to do this and do it quite strongly and extremely, and then find a middle ground with that, or they may just be that way as they were in their ego and their personality. So that whole idea that, we are one, and to be all wishy-washy and that kind of laissez-faire, easy boundary one, where there's sort of like, I'm at one with the universe, so it's okay what happens, it's their karma, I'm okay. You realize after a while that may not work for you in terms of your ultimate spiritual growth, because as I mentioned, for the soul to have to be clarified and to express as that pure unfolding energy, there needs to be a structure around that. It's kind of like you don't just let your, if you've got your pond, you don't just let it sort of trickle off into the nearest stream because it just wanted to do that. You know, if you were a village, you would maintain the boundaries of your own water source. So it's kind of like honoring your own energy and power and holding that sacred and realizing the importance of it. And it is very important in this day and age because there are so many things competing for our attention, and our attention is the commodity. Because if somebody has our attention, they have our energy, they have us going in their direction, they have our money, they have our watching time, they have us. We're committed to them in that way. Do you understand that, you know, where attention goes, energy flows? So we need to be sort of sovereign holders of our own energy and power, of our own individual slither of consciousness. And we need to take ownership of what we do with that and how we direct that. And to be distracted by fear is not going to help you. The fear will burden the soul with more emotional turmoil. If you look at David Hawkins' levels of consciousness, you'll see the different vibratory levels at which our consciousness radiates, vibrates, when our emotions are taking over. Because we are very emotional beings. We can't not be emotionally human beings. Like, we have basic circuitry within our whole physical system that is emotional. And what I find with people, the more sort of spiritually refined they get, somebody who's completely enlightened may be able to not have that emotional range, but as a human, that is the essence of who we are. So we do have emotions, we do feel things, but the importance is what we do with that and how we manage it, because that's our energy as well. So if we've been aggravated by something, then we work on that, because that's our emotional content. And we spiritual people usually let things get felt and they can express, but they get over things very quickly. There's sort of no holding on to it in the sense that it goes over and around and around. We learn ways to sort of let things go, to let the water run over us in a way. But it doesn't mean to say that we're completely, but like impervious. The essence of being human is to feel deeply and to feel joy. So in order to still feel joy and bliss and elation and pleasure and laughter and all of the great reasons why we incarnated as a human, we still have to be in contact with our emotions. But there is an ability to let that emotion arise and to fall and to not hold on to it, because that's what the ego does. The ego holds on to emotions and makes up stories or connects past events to it, or looks at the event in which that emotion was stimulated, and that hooks into the history and the stories, and it becomes an ongoing thing that gets perpetuated in the mind over and over again, and it creates greater suffering and attachment. So again, even then, boundaries around what we will and won't allow to happen in our life will prevent the creation of more karma, the creation of more cause and effect, the creation of more things to get emotionally upset about and ruminate over, turn over and over in our mind. So when we can even put boundaries within ourselves around how we are feeling, if you feel yourself spiraling down around something, then you use your consciousness and your awareness to bring yourself out of it. You put a boundary within yourself going, I'm not going to allow myself to entertain these thoughts over and over again because they are not for my highest good. And then, you can work towards strategies for changing your mood and shifting the focus of your attention and bringing your vibration up to higher levels. Ideally levels of joy and peace and optimism and happiness. And we need that now more than ever, because there is a battle for our attention. There has been all along, since media and marketing and all of that worked out how they could manipulate our attention. And now we have, many different theories and opinions and people and organizations and agendas competing for our attention. What we want to do is not have emotional drains going off in particular areas. We want to be sovereign owners of our own individual consciousness, and we want to raise our consciousness and our level of being. So we want to be in a state of joy and love and equanimity as often as possible. And by doing that, we are helping the world. We're not turning away from suffering. We're not turning away from what's going on. We're saying, well, my solution to this is to raise my vibration and to raise my energy and to keep that high. Because if enough people do that, then we create this sort of pull of energy and resonance, for other people to fall into resonance with. So we become the torchbearers, the light holders of a higher vibration that can pull other vibrations and energy towards it, as being like, let's not go here, let's not go here, let's go up here. And it's not about bypassing or transcending. It's not about not feeling, and it's not about ignoring. It's about keeping your own consciousness, as elevated as you desire, and looking towards the highest, best possible outcome for all of humanity. So while it sounds selfish, it's actually being altruistic and ultimately caring. It means that you want to map forward into something better. You may not know what it is, right? We don't need to know the answers. The more you follow the spiritual path, the more you'll see that the universe has got things in mind that you could have never possibly imagined. So it's not for us and for our egos to know. It's our ego that wants to know the answer all the time. It's our own internal anxiety that wants to know when, where, how, what, why. But when you are going with the flow and you're just being an emergent soul energy that wants to be a conduit for spirit, then you can be more allowing and be more flowing. And all you have to do is to try and keep your boundaries clear and to focus your individual slither of consciousness on the highest outcome for all concerned. So I hope you enjoyed that. I did get a little bit more spiritual than I have in my other videos, but I'd like to continue to do that if people are liking this. So do hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to hear more. If there is something particular you want me to talk on, pop it in the comments below. And as you move forward in your life, the light in me honors the light in you. Namaste.